I don't know about y'all, but it's been pretty warm here where I've been at, and I am thankful for air conditioning this week. Oh my goodness, it has been so warm. Now to fit the theme a little bit, it's nice to go outside at night when it's cool and all that, but during the day, yeah, it's hot during the day, and it's just nice to be in an air conditioned room and not really worry about anything. Temperature wise, you can kind of just chill out. And I kind of take it for granted sometimes until I actually have to go out and deal with the heat for a lot of the day. You know, it we avoid a lot of heat deaths as a result of having AC in the modern era. I mean, we really do. It's just kind of amazing how we don't think about that. Um, it's just a lot more comfortable too. And I was doing a little bit of reading actually before this, and I didn't realize just how far back air conditioning stuff goes. So it, it I knew that it kind of entered mainstream and became more popular by the 1950s in America, that it became kind of possible for the average family to afford air conditioning, right? Well, what I didn't know is that it had been worked on a lot further back. In fact, there's experiments, not necessarily, the way we think of modern air conditioner, but experiments where people were able to use various chemicals and evaporation techniques to cool things down, going back as far as actually the 1500s, which I didn't realize it went back that far. I thought that would maybe be, the 1800s. And hey, listen, man, stuff was crazy in the 80s. I'm not talking about the 1980s. I'm talking about the 1880s. There was a lot of technological progress going on then that people don't realize. Like a lot of like this vision of like a cowboy America or whatever is really overshadowed by the fact that there was a lot of modern technology that was already coming out by the 1880s. I know I was meant to be talking about air conditioning, but here we are. I mean, it's kind of like this, You don't. I've had this in my world for a while, this netherite block, and I still haven't been able to find one of those trim things, so that's why I'm still chilling in diamond armor, even though as soon as I find one trim thing, I could be in full netherite. But like, we don't realize just how far back this stuff goes. We always think like, it's super recent, super this, super that, and some stuff is really recent. Computers are kind of recent, but we don't realize a lot of that technology was already starting to come out. You know, a lot of our modern world was born in the 1920s, about a century ago. And I think a lot of people mistake, like, we lived in the Stone Age somehow before World War II, and that's not really true. There was a lot of stuff, like, there was already, modern lighting. I think there's some very basic refrigeration, even by like the 30s. Granted, a lot of it was, you know, we used ice and various other techniques to keep the ice cooler longer and for making ice as well. In fact, there were people who were commercially making ice artificially as far back as I believe 1860s. I was just reading about, which is amazing. I can't believe that. I never would have thought that it would go back that far. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, we got the Civil War thing going on, but we can make ice now. What? Like when I do research on these little things for these videos, I'm always blown away by how far back some of it goes. I just am, and who worked on it too. I guess Benjamin Franklin worked on some stuff as far as like e- use an evaporative experiment to cool things down. He worked on it with someone else. I'm blanking on whose name that was, but you can look at the. It's in the Wikipedia article. There's a bit of information in there. It's pretty cool. And then there was Michael Faraday, which if you've never heard of a Faraday cage, it's pretty cool. Faraday cages are basically what makes it so that your microwave doesn't boil you alive as well. It keeps the microwaves inside the microwave. I'll probably do an episode on microwaves at some point. That seems like a fascinating everyday piece of technology. But you know, I digress. Back to air conditioning, which I'm walking around in my Minecraft house just like I would be walking around in my real life house to avoid how hot it is outside. I might actually go for a walk later because I'm a little psycho, but you know. And as the sun rises and things are going to start getting warmer soon, you know, having the comfort of air conditioning is something I think I've taken for granted. And I've had jobs, I've had a lot of jobs where I've worked indoors doing things, and there was that one time I was doing some outdoor work in the summer, and oh man, I could tell. I was sweating. I was all kinds of thirsty. It really it just oh man. Oh man. Let me let me adjust this. You know, it it is amazing how much it can like change how your day functions. You know, back in older times, I mean, before air conditioning was around, it influenced things like house design. You know, like something I'm aware of is, you know, if you have a multi-story house, that top floor is hot. Oh, it's hot if you don't have AC. It's hot even with AC sometimes. But that bottom ground floor, not such a bad temperature. You know, there's things that air conditioning has really changed. Like we can build skyscrapers, and now it's not as bad because you have air conditioning. Although for those of you who went to college where the freshman dorms didn't have AC like I went to, yeah, you can tell when you're first going in and it's August and September and it's not quite cooled off yet. Oh yeah, it's warm. Oh my gosh, it is so warm, but it's nice being cool inside. It just is. It's cooler in here. You should come in. I enjoy staying cool, but hey, that's just me. Probably because I'm from a more northern-ish climate, so. But in the thing I was reading, one of the other things they mentioned is that when central AC was being put into some of the first suburban homes ever built in America, I guess there was a study done, and among some of the things in the study, um, more baking and cooking was done at home. Um, Families ate like kind of bigger or heavier meals, and there's a preference for hot drinks. So it's weird to think how technology can affect us. I mean, you know, I've talked about it several times on this channel. You know, it's how you use the technology, but there is kind of a sense in which the technology can shape and affect you in a lot of ways. I mean, someone who grows up in a more rural setting, for example, is going to see the world a lot different than someone who grows up in an urban setting. And, you know, someone who grows up rural is going to probably understand things like farming and living off the land and just will probably not always. I'm generalizing to a kind of unhealthy degree. Look, I'm just some guy in the internet. Don't take everything I say for law. But uh, you know, they see the world and they tend to be more introverted, whereas people in the city are usually a little bit more extroverted. They're more outgoing. They kind of they just live life a bit different. And you know, all technology shapes us. That's for sure. And I guess I have realized, you know, even with something as mundane as air conditioning. Oh, that was a bad leg spike. Even with something as mundane as air conditioning, it can really shape who you are and how you see things. And I'm very I- I'm grateful I have air conditioning, But I do remember the one summer, not summer, sorry. I remember being a freshman in college a little while back and being in those dorms without air conditioning kind of changed my routine. You know, I would leave the windows open more. I would go to the other buildings on campus that had air conditioning. It it sort of I honestly wonder for all the discussion online about third places disappearing and everything else, maybe some of it is because we've made it so easy to stay at home. I mean, air conditioning is kind of a first step in that. Like in if you go to some like smaller rural old towns, there are some places, especially in the northern US, where they don't really have AC or like someone might bring out, you know, the unit they put in their window when it gets really hot. But there's places like, people go to like the senior center or something to cool off and like literally just basic survival needs could bring people together. And now because we've made it so convenient to just, stay in your house all day and stare at dumb signs you put on the wall. Now we don't have as much community. Again, I know, very profound for me just talking about something really, really mundane like air conditioning. But yeah, technology affects us more than we think. Now, anyways, I get really, really distracted as you can tell, but it is a kind of fun to mix in these things with how the technology actually works. I'm thankful we have AC. I'm glad I have AC in my apartment and I can stay home and not really have to do much. But that's partially because it's smoky outside too, so it's not really it's not the best to go outside right now. I mean, you can go out in the mornings and it's not as bad then, but yeah. And like I think it I think it's interesting how it can change things culturally as well. I mean, I know. I gotta mention the stereotype because this is what all people from the US do. We only understand the external world in stereotypes. So, like, there's a thing with, like, Mexicans, and actually, it applies to a lot more of, like, even places in South America from what I've been told by people who actually live there. Like, the reason that they have siestas in the afternoon is because it's hot as crap. And in some of those places, they don't have the best access to AC, or the power grid isn't as reliable, so there can be rolling brownouts or blackouts. And so, and it's also just a cultural carryover from before AC. I mean, human beings have been doing things for a long time. We figured out some adaptations. And so they'll have a siesta where they sleep for a couple hours in the middle of the afternoon because it's kind of just too hot to do anything else, and therefore they will stay up pretty late at night and they'll still get up early in the morning. You go, how do they get their sleep? Well, they got it in the afternoon, and that's how they're able to do it. You're able to adapt. I e- Even with something simple, it can change how we live our life, and I think that that's pretty cool. I'm definitely glad I have air conditioning because it would be miserable right now. But on that same vein, I would probably be more likely to go out to somewhere like a coffee shop that had air conditioning if I didn't have any in my apartment. And I'd go out, you know, I'd do this. I'd go out my front door, at my front gate, and I'd go see the world. I'd go talk to other people and explore things more, but, you know, I'm staying cool in my apartment. And that can be a good or a bad thing. Like I said, it's not all bad, but it definitely changes the way you live. And I think that's something to be conscious of. I know, we were meant to talk about how we're staying cool, and now I'm mildly having an existential crisis about how air conditioning and its consequences have affected our community, among other things. I know. It's a little edgy to mention that, but I did it anyway. So, I mean, like, you know, used to be you come to places like this, And yes, this is my really bad villager trading hall. I don't don't hate me, okay? I can't I can't quite. Oh, I forgot I could trade nether wart with this guy. See, this is why I need to get outside of my air-conditioned house a little more. Cool. Gonna get a few. Oh, I need to do some trading real quick. I have actually been mining a lot of iron, so it's not really a big deal. I forgot that I could just straight up buy diamond tools from this guy. That's kind of goated. I need to keep some coal on me. But like, you know, you go where things are convenient. You go where the technology allows you to go. And I don't know how, but my last video kind of blew up a little bit compared to my others where I talk about roads and like roads enable us to do so many more things than if we were to just be at home all day. It gives us more options. And at the end of the day, I'm ultimately an advocate for having options. And I think that what you choose to do, you know, this is where if you want to get really philosophical, it comes down to your choice of religion or just kind of general operating code in life. And that if you pick an operating code that allows you to live a decent life and sort of allows for your community to have a decent life, then that's probably the better operating code. I'm not going to say what the best operating code is because honestly, at this time in my life, I don't know. And that's not just like a, you know, religious existential thing, although you could interpret it as that. It's more of, okay, if I believe in this religion or this, that, and the other, how do I put that into context, really? How do I stay cool? Yes, that pun was intended. I'm really sorry, but I don't want to ramble on too long. And again, I'm just some guy in the internet. I don't know that much at the end of the day. So, you know, if you have your own opinions, you have your own discussion you want to make about this, I encourage you to leave some comments because I do try and read through those. And I get interesting ideas. In fact, my inspiration for this video was because of a commenter on a few videos ago. So, thank you for that. And who knows, maybe if I run out of ideas, I'll use you as the audience to help me figure out what we want to do next. But anyways, I do just want to say thank you very much for listening to me ramble on about stuff, and I hope that your week is going well. Stay thankful.